Hello everybody, my name is Sean Beiswinger. I'm the founder of ACME Machine, and I want to thank you guys for your purchase and walking through the first steps of building your own AR-15. First, we're going to go over the lower receiver part, and then the second part will be the upper receiver, and the third part will be final assembly of the two halves. So what we're going to go do through is you're going to open up and take out the bags with the lower parts in them and separate them into the separate piles. You're going to have 4 different groups. You're going to have the fire control group, you're going to have the rear and takedown assemblies, and your magazine and pistol grip setups. So first you're going to grab the magazine release and the magazine release button and spring. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to put it in the opposite end, put the spring in first, and you just notice you're going to slide that in and you're going to turn it and screw it into the button. And you rotate that around until it just clears the other side of it. Pushing the button in will help clear the outside recess on the lower receiver. The next part we're going to focus on is the bolt catch. In the spring, you're going to put the little plunger in there first, and the bolt catch and bolt release uses a proprietary bolt catch screw that has a 1/16 Allen head screw on it. So it's going to want a long Allen wrench for that. And then once you have that in there, you want to pull the latch a few times, make sure it's not rubbing on anything or catching. Next, we're going to do the trigger control group. This here is the trigger and the disconnect spring here. There is a tapered side to this. You want to make sure you put it in the wider side in first, and you'll hear that spring click. Installing the trigger springs, you're going to want to slide them over the springs. Make sure you pay attention to the orientation of the springs, because when you install this into the lower, you want the front of the spring legs going forward. This is the disconnect that goes on top of the trigger, and that gets held in place by one of the trigger pins. Next, we're going to go with the hammer and the hammer spring. Again, make a note of your orientation of the springs and the legs for the springs. You want to make sure they're faced to the rear, so these are going to be opposite of the trigger springs. So when you're putting this in, you got to bend the springs and push them down, so there will be some resistance on it. So you got to hold that in place while you put in the trigger pin to hold it in spot. Sometimes you're going to need a little rubber mallet. It's going to help. You can get it started to hold it with your finger and then just tap it in with the rubber mallet. Another benefit from our billet receivers is these holes are going to be extremely tight, which is what you're going to want, so you don't have to worry about them walking out on you. To test the trigger, what we're going to do here is we're going to set the hammer, and then you're going to pull the trigger, but make sure you catch the hammer. You don't want to slam it into your bolt release. Next is your safety. Install the safety oriented up, and our lower is different than some lowers, is that we install the safety spring and the rear detent spring on the back side. So dropping the detent in there first, and then the spring, and you can put in the rear takedown pin. Drop in your detent, and you can rotate it until you hear it click. That then you know that the detent is in the channel for the pin. Then the spring. And then what holds those springs in is the pistol grip. This can be a little tricky. You want to make sure you get those springs to go in straight and not bend. And then you'll use our Allen screw here with the washer and tighten that down. Function test the safety. The hammer has to be cocked for the safety to move. And what you're going to do is you're going to catch that hammer to make sure it doesn't fall on you. But then you're going to want to reset the trigger. When you reset the trigger, you see how you let the trigger go forward, and you should hear it click. Then that's that disconnect spring working in there to make sure that the trigger is resetting correctly. Next, to be our forward pivot pin, you got the spring in first this time, and then the detent. And you just want to put it in there on the flat side like that, and then rotate it around so that the channel clicks that detent into the channel. And what that does is it keeps it from falling out. Rear takedown pin will go in the same way. Now you can function test everything again just to make sure everything is good. And we're going to start on the rear buffer retaining pin. Insert the spring first and then the buffer retainer. And then we're going to go to the stock assembly. This stock is a carbine buffer system. It's going to have a 6-position or 5-position buffer tube. Your castle nut goes onto the tube first. Then your end plate You'll notice the notch there on the tube that you're gonna have to line that up correctly. And the trick to this is you wanna get this started, and you're gonna wanna push the detent down, and you just want this to hold that detent down. Not too far, making sure it's close enough, but it needs to hold that detent down, and that's gonna keep your buffer captured back there. On the commercial products, we don't usually tend to stake these. If this was going to be a product going into market, not a hobbyist, not really common that people would stake these. It's highly recommended that you stake that castle nut so it doesn't back out on you. But if you ever wanted to work on these in the future, change out your stock to a different stock, you're going to have to cut that with the Dremel or those stake marks out of it to get it out. Insert your spring and your buffer over the retainer. You're going to push the retaining pin down a little bit, and there you can see that pin keeps the buffer back. So that's when you separate the two halves, that buffer doesn't come flying forward. It's a good time to test everything, make sure everything is moving. Check your magazine catches, your pivot pins, take down safety, but your lower assembly is complete. On to step 2, our upper receiver. A really nice part to the upper receiver is to find a fixture or jig that can help you assemble the upper receiver. Starting with the forward assist. The forward assist and spring will go in and make sure it's oriented with the lever pointing towards the inner part of the receiver. And this is going to help you if your gun's jamming, you push it forward and it'll help it go into battery. This is a real Avid fixture. It's really nice for doing bolts and upper receivers. Roll pin starter punches are great for this process to get it started. Once you get it started, you can go to the regular punch set, push that all the way through and give it a couple pushes to make sure that the spring is working correctly and it's aligned correctly with the roll pin. This will be our dust cover assembly. You have a rod here with a C-clip on the end of it. And that's going to keep everything from sliding out into the notch there. Using a pair of pliers can help save your fingers on this step, just to give it a squeeze. You're going to slide the rod in, but before you do, you're going to line up the dust cover. And this part can be tricky sometimes on aligning the spring the correct way, because if you don't do this part correctly, your dust cover will not spring open when you open it. So look at the ears on the spring and make sure it's oriented correctly. You notice he did a twist on the spring to get spring tension on the ears. Then when you can close the dust cover, it should flop open. And this is a reaction rod. This is to install the barrel and the barrel nut. It's a highly recommended tool that makes installation of barrels and barrel nuts very easy. You'll find your barrel and the index on the barrel extension will go into the notch for the upper receiver. We like to do some graphite grease or some anti-seize. It's a Permatex product that if you ever wanted to take this apart, it's going to come apart a little easier on you. Sometimes when customers are putting it together and they want to change their handguard out to a different model, you might have to add a little heat to it to get it off without anti-seize. Again, on commercial products or hobbyist products, this is a step that you don't need, but it's highly recommended. So the torque spec on the standard threads for the upper receiver is 35 to 80 pounds. Just understand that you're going to want to season the threads a little bit. It is recommended to use a torque wrench to get it between 35 and maybe 60 pounds, but not necessary. Knowing that you don't want to be on the high end of the scale because you can torque the threads on the aluminum upper receiver with the steel barrel nut. Next, we're going to do the gas block and the gas tube assembly. You want to have the hole on the gas tube facing down into the gas block. And then line up the hole for the gas tube roll pin. These fixtures and jigs hold these nicely so that you can get your roll pin starter in there. Give it a couple taps to get the roll pin started. And then you can follow it back up with the standard punch all the way through. You kind of want these running flush. After inspection, we like to give it a little blow test, just to make sure that you can feel good suction and blowing. I know it kind of seems archaic, but that's a nice little tip that we always check before we go to the next step. Now's a good time to insert your your set screws for the gas block. Lining up your gas hole on the barrel and the gas block is very critical to this gun functioning. While it's not needed, a bore light cam or a bore camera makes this process a lot easier. So we're going to demonstrate what that looks like. And so if you're going to get a few of these or you're going to do it in the future, you can notice how much time is saved and how easy this process is if you have a tool like this bore cam. So what he's doing is he's looking at the hole, and there you can see the hole lining up with the gas tube hole. And what he's going to do is he's going to hold it there and tighten it down, making sure it doesn't move or shift as he's tightening it down. And then he'll check it again to make sure that the alignment is good. You'll want to torque down the set screws for the gas block, and then we'll get started on the handguard. Our honeycomb handguard comes with its own nuts and bolts, and then the set screws for the bottom. We like to put the nuts in first and get the screws started on the bottom. Be sure to insert the set screws because these are going to be keep the handguard if it ever came loose. Some handguard designs, unlike ours, you have to use shims and time it. What's nice about these clamp-on styles is that's a step that's not required. As you notice, this is just friction fit on there, and those set screws will keep it from coming off or coming loose. So you just torque these down. There's really no torque spec on these threads. You're not going to hurt it. The Fixtures sticks is another great tool that we use on all of our builds. Make sure that you got these set screws screwed in all the way down. These will go into a channel recess cut into the barrel nut, and it's just another step to make sure that the handguard does not come loose. This is a crush washer. Be sure to angle the flange narrow side going towards the barrel. And you're going to want to time your flash hiders to get it as close as possible. And you'll grab your wrench. This is an armorer's wrench, standard armorer's wrench. And you're going to line up, cut out flash ports up at 12 o'clock. All right, next we're going to install the bolt carrier group and charging handle. Before installing the bolt carrier group and charging handle, you're going to notice the notches here on the upper receiver drops down into the channel cut out in the upper receiver. There's a notch cut out there that you can get it to drop into before you install the bolt carrier group. We highly recommend, especially when they're new, to run your bolt carrier groups well oiled. You notice here on all the raceways and the contact surfaces, we love Lucas gun oil products, shout out to them. But we're going to well lubricate all of the contact surfaces here on the bolt carrier group, on the raceways, and then also on the springs. When you push the bolt in a little bit, you'll see the gas rings lined up into the oil bleeder holes. You can just drop a little bit of oil inside there to keep your piston rings oiled until you're ready to shoot. After that, the bolt is well oiled. You slide the charging handle in. You're going to make sure the bolt is pulled forward, and then slide and insert it all the way until you hear it click and set into the upper receiver. As you see here, pulling the charging handle is going to open up the dust cover, and then your bolt carrier group should move freely. Step 3, full assembly. So now you have your complete assembled lower and your complete assembled upper. A great benefit to this AR platform is that changing out calibers is as easy as dropping these 2 pins. Cock the hammer, put the safety on. What we like to do is put the pivot pin on first, close the pin, and push the upper onto the lower, and close your rear pin. Now you're going to want to function test it to make sure that the safety and the bolt moves freely. And something you'll notice with our billet lowers is that the match tight fitness between our upper receiver and the lower receiver is going to be nice and tight. That is your bolt release. So when you pull your charging handle back, you can push your bolt release to make sure it holds the bolt backwards. And to release it, you push the top of the button. There you have it. There's your complete assembled ACME Rifles AM-15 Build-A-Kit. Now you're ready to go to the range and test fire.